Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Top 10 edition of Magic Mike's, proudly sponsored by our Patreon supporters and CoolStuffInc.com, where you can find cool stuff in stock every day, and our co-sponsor CardHoarder.com, offering the best inventory prices and delivery of cards for Magic Online. I'm Evan Irwin, and I'm going to get started each week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
It's a new week. Hi.
Ruben Bressler.
Good to be back. How's everybody doing?
Post GP Vegas for Miss Campbell.
I'm still recovering, if I'm being completely honest.
I mean, it's Vegas, so, nobody escapes Vegas completely whole, right?
Unscathed, no, but it was an amazing time, and I got to meet so many awesome fans, and it was worth it. Let's put it that way.
Good. That's great. And if you want to hear more salacious tales, see the pre-show.
I heard you had a great hotel room. You had a bunch of friends and just a bunch of great experiences. I can't wait to hear all of the tales.
You were there.
No, more tales from everyone, Aaron, not just you.
The royal we. All right. So we also begin with our choice of the top comment from last week in a segment we call Honorable Mention, where Ruben will tell us who was the most luxuriant and letting us know what card we did not choose as one of our top 10 X spells. Ruben?
This week's winner is Christian Davis from our Facebook, and be sure to like us on all of our social media channels for everywhere you can, including the Facebook. There have been many before and many after, one of the most useful and ubiquitous X counterspells ever printed, but none will ever take this card's spot. While Power Sync and its ilk may have paved the way for this one, there will never be a replacement for countering spells and library manipulation, all for the bare minimum price of X and a blue. And especially in Pauper, X will never give it to you any better than Condescend. I stumbled at the end there, but you get the con.
We got there. Condescend is a common from Fifth Dawn. It's blue and X. It's a common instant that says counter target spell unless its controller pays X, and then you scry 2. So you get a free scry off the end of your X spell, and it was a highly playable card. Finally reprinted again as an uncommon in Iconic Masters.
Whenever I think of Condescend, I think of Mono Blue Tron in Modern, because the way that deck works is Green Tron just wants to assemble Tron as quickly as possible. Mono Blue Tron just wants to control the game with counter spells until they're damn good and ready to play Tron, and that's what they use to do that, because you can make a bunch of mana with your Tron.
Very nice. All right. Well, Christian Davis, good luck. If you may or may not be blocked by Aaron on social media already. Some are, I
believe in you. And you can also contact us on the Facebook.
Yeah, that's where I saw this coming. It was lovely.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, feel free to get in touch there, and we'll get you your $50 gift certificate. Thank you so much to CoolStuffInc.com for sponsoring this giveaway, and we'll have another giveaway on our next show, which means we get to roll in here to the top 10 Hall of Famers. It's Hall of Fame votes time.
Oh my God.
I'll be revealing my Hall of Fame vote this Wednesday, which is tomorrow for those.
Wow, already? When are they due?
September 3rd.
Jeepers.
So I don't want to sit on mine too long.
That's
and
fair.
Then scramble and be like, So I put some thought into this one. We'll see.
All right.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this episode. One of the things that we all have Hall of Fame ballots, actually. Thank you, Wizards, for giving us them. But one of the things they really emphasized this year in the email is that they want to make the discussion more positive than it's been in previous years past. And so we were really encouraged to celebrate the people we did pick as opposed to talking about the people that we didn't, bring people up without having to bring other people down. And so I think it's great that we're doing that in our own way by talking about people, specifically Hall of Famers, that we really enjoy, and we're contributing to that discussion.
Absolutely. So that said, we do have a Hall of Fame that is full of people. There are lots.
So many people.
How many are in the Hall of Fame at this point as of this writing? I'll make a note here.
48 players from 12 different countries as of 2018.
Wow.
There you go.
Well, 48 options. And Ruben, I think you've got a couple of hires in there. Just a smidge?
I have 2 sames and 4 hires.
Jinkies. I have 2 hires and a same.
All right, then. Well, let's kick it off here. Ruben, do you have a number 10?
I do, in fact, have a number 10. And building this list was interesting for me. I could very easily have gone just stats and just taken the top 10 Hall of Famers by numbers, and I could have turned that in as my homework assignment and felt good about it. But I didn't want to just stick to that. I wanted to say, who are the most ubiquitous, or who are the most interesting, or who had the weirdest Hall of Fame story, or what are the Hall of Famers that when you think about the Hall of Fame, you think of them in the context of the Hall of Fame. And I certainly think that my number 10 appears in that context. Certainly, he has the stats. He is the 6th highest weighted ballot percentage in history. 86.8% of those voting chose to put this person into the Hall of Fame back in 2014. And he's also a super unique, interesting character in the world of Japanese Magic. He has 5 Pro Tour top 8s, including a win, and also has a Worlds win, a Team World Championship win, I should say, and a Personal World Championship win as well. So he actually has a ton, and he's well known as sort of a wild deck builder and sort of goes off the rails sometimes. My number 10 is Makihito Mihara.
Oh, Makihito Mihara is absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. Got in on, what was it, 2014 here. He's played 37 Pro Tours. His median finish overall, his number is 89th place, but his 3-year median is 39th place.
Which is crazy to get a top 50 median finish, yeah.
Right, with all those Pro Tour top 8s, which is kind of a big slam dunk there. He's won events left and right, and just a fantastic player ever since he's been around from, 2002 all the way through today.
Long time. His Pro Tour debut was 2003 Venice, which I think was early in that year. He's only one of 4 players to win both an individual and a team world title.
And he's been a world champion, as I understand it. There you go. Well, the team world champion, right? But yeah.
Both, yes.
Both it is. All right.
Both
so
the individual and team worlds.
Nice. Aaron, what's your number 10?
So Ruben talked about his criteria for what made him choose the people that he chose. And, I felt the same way as Ruben in a lot of ways. I wanted somebody interesting. I wanted longevity. I tried to pick people that are still around in some capacity. I also wanted people that had maybe been able to branch out into other communities that aren't just good at Magic, that aren't just good at the competitive arena, that maybe have broken into content creation, or maybe have played, other games, or maybe they've gone to work at Wizards. So I really wanted careers. I wanted longevity. And I think that my list nails that pretty well. But my number 10 is also a Japanese Magic player, and he embodies so much of what I love about Japanese Magic. He has the ingenuity in terms of playing decks that not many other people would play. His ability to play on short notice, in fact, to sort of choose a deck the night before and, win a Pro Tour with it or do well at a Pro Tour with it. I love how unflappable he is, that, no matter what's going on, he's game face. When he's happy, he's sad, whatever. I remember there was a meme that went around during his last big Pro Tour appearance where it was like the 100 faces of this person. And it was like happy, sad, angry, excited, and it was the same face because you cannot see what is on his face when he is playing. My number 10 is Shouta Yasuka. So Shouta is really, impressive in many ways. Some of the noteworthy things about him is that when the Magic Online Player of the Year award was introduced in 2009, he won. He was the first player to win this honor. He is famously Yaya 3 on Magic Online, so you could very well play him. He also won the 2009 Magic Online Champions Sealed title. His Pro Tour debut was in 2001 in Pro Tour Barcelona. He's made over $391,000 in winnings at 35 years old, 600 lifetime pro points. Just has had an incredible career, and there's just nobody like Shouta. Like, you just watch him and he's just flawlessness, and it's just like, how do you do that?
Well, it turns out we have 3 Japanese players all in our number 10 slot.
Oh.
Because my number 10 slot, this was very close. And, maybe Mr. Kibler shows up later, but, Brian was my number 11 because number 10 here, Kibler is Kibler, and everybody loves Kibler, and Kibler's amazing, and he has an unbelievable charisma. But there was a special kind of something about my pick for number 10, and I got to play in an invitational with him, and it was absolutely amazing. And the guy was just like a force to be reckoned with. I got to hang out with him sort of essentially at the height of his powers and whatnot, and he was amazing. And they got to go bowl, and I had to stay in and make the Magic show, which makes me sad because I would have loved to have bowled with Kenji Samura. Kenji Samura at this point has her Pro Tour debut in Chicago 2003, has almost won 200K, 6 Pro Tour top 8s, 14 GP top 8s with 2 wins, 50 Pro Tours played, 364 lifetime points that they'll never get to add to because the system's changed. But Kenji is fantastic.
I once 3v3 money drafted against Kenji Tsumura. I want to say Mark Herberholtz and one other very well-known player, and we did not win. But this was Shadowmoor draft, and this was Kenji's like second or third time playing Shadowmoor, and he had multiple copies of a card that was like a 2/3 persist for 4 mana that was blue and green. And he thought that when it died or when it came into play, you put it on the bottom of the library or on the top of the library or something. Anyway, he thought that it went back to the top of the library and instead it went to the bottom. And when he read the card for the first time, I was sitting directly next to him, and they were like, "No, that's not how that card works." And he was like, like audibly gasped, like was like showing Mark the card that he had 6 copies of in his deck because he thought it worked in a different way than it actually did. And he's just such a charismatic, fun-loving dude. Just a really an adorable human.
I will always remember Kenji Samura because a couple years ago, he was responsible for hashtag Kenji Wayfinder. So Haruruya used to do this thing where anytime a new set would come out, they would post like 10 or 11 deck lists featuring the new cards. And he was the person responsible for them. And you can click on the hashtag. And so I remember I was doing the girlfriend bracket at the time. And so anytime a new set would come out, we would always see like what crazy decks is Kenji going to build? You know, what cards is he going to build around? And it was always such a treat just going through and going, you know, oh my God, I would play this. And like, there was enough there where like, they weren't quite finished. Like they'd give you like a little bit of a stepping stone. And it would always be nice to see like, not only what was he going to build, but then when the rotation or like when standard really kicked in, how many of his decks actually became real. And so that was something I lived for. He hasn't done it in a little while yet. Bring it back, Kenji. But I always enjoyed seeing his thoughts on things.
Absolutely. Let's move here to number 9. Ruben, what's your number 9?
So for me, there was a big discussion when this player went into the Hall of Fame of what is the Hall of Fame barrier, and specifically, what does community contributions mean? Because when this player went into the Hall of Fame, there was no doubt in everyone's mind that he had all of the things you needed except for the 4th Pro Tour top 8, which he now has. But at the time, it was a bit of a controversy that Patrick Chapin went into the Hall of Fame when he did. Patrick Chapin, of course, is a legendary theorist, writer. So I actually edited one of his books. He has a Pro Tour win with his now 5 top 8s. He has a really great amount of stats, and you know, there's just no replacing the innovator.
Rapper, fried chicken connoisseur. I mean, just one of those minds that when you get the opportunity to play in it, you should definitely do that. Like one of my favorite interviews on the Deck Tease, I remember he gave me some of the best advice I ever had. There was a moment in the show where I was talking about how I felt obligated, how I hated losing to certain things because I felt like there wasn't a story there. And I had said something effective like, God, it feels really bad to lose this card. What would I tell people? And he was like, why? And I'm like, what do you mean? And it was such a novel concept. And he's like, why do you owe people a story about your defeat? Why do you owe them that experience? And it was just so simple. And I was like, you're right. Like, and so he's just brilliant in unusual ways. And he's so funny. And I feel very lucky to have been able to talk to him even in a brief capacity.
Yeah, I got to know Mr. Chapin over many years. We got to record some stuff for the Magic Show. We went on the Magic Cruise together. We hung out at various events and whatnot. And obviously a brilliant mind. It was fun. It was always fun to talk politics with Chapin. I'm not even going to get into it. I'm just telling you, it was a wild ride.
It's fun to talk everything with Patrick.
Very true. Yeah.
It really is.
I had the honor and privilege of staying with Patrick for a week leading up to this was Lorwyn Block PTQ season. I just went up and stayed at Patrick's apartment in Detroit for a week when I was very wet behind the ears, and just, you know, lived there and lived and breathed Lorwyn Block theory and listening to Patrick Chape, like sitting at the foot of the master. Recorded an episode of The Main Phase with
old school.
Yeah, bringing it back, like finding cave paintings of the Main Phase. But yeah, it's he's one of the most unique minds I've ever come across.
Yeah, it's always fun to talk with Patrick. So, All right, let's move on here to Aaron. What is your number 9?
Ruben, I feel like you and I are kind of in line with each other. You know, both of our number 10s were Japanese players. Our number 9s are both kind of controversial as well. I love an underdog, or I love a comeback kid. I love somebody who can that you might rule out or you might eliminate for certain reasons, and then they come back and prove you wrong. And I love somebody with a little bit of stank on them, who's not afraid to make mistakes, who's not afraid to admit that they've made mistakes. And that's something that really means a lot to me, you know, as somebody who's certainly made mistakes in my Magic career and even in my personal life. And, you know, watching this person ascend into the Hall of Fame, you know, really gave me hope and inspired me in a lot of ways. And it's been really great to see his evolution, particularly in recent years. He's also branched out into other games, most notably poker. My number 9 is Eric Froelich. So Eric Froelich is just an incredible dude. You know, I've really enjoyed watching his evolution through the years. I feel like he's become softer. You know, he was known for having a little bit of an edge to him. You know, some might have even called him unfriendly or even just mean sometimes. You know, it was very controversial when, you know, he was nominated. I know that people really kind of had their, you know, their knives out for him a little bit. And, you know, he did a really good job of kind of, you know, reassuring people and kind of apologizing for things and showing growth. You know, we talk about how important growth is in the, you know, in the journey of a human being. And I love seeing him and Athena together. I think they're an amazing couple. I love watching him. He plays vintage and old school, which is something that means a lot to me. And it's just a really brilliant player. I like watching him, and I think he's just a great person. And, you know, I think the evolution of Ifro is really what captivated me and made me put him on this list.
Now, Ruben, you've lived with a man, so
I lived with Ifro, and I also lived with Athena. She moved in during the period of time that I was living there, and then I moved out, obviously, because that was how that worked.
You're a boner killer, Ruben.
I'll take it. Yeah, I lived there, was roommates with Eric Froelich as part of that house with Brock Parker and Tan and Grace. And I think Dave Williams was part of that little group. And I replaced Huey Jensen in that room that I moved into.
Wow.
So that was where I lived for a little while. So Eric and I know each other quite well, and I know Honey the dog pretty well. And just a sweetheart of a human being. Just you know, he gets a bad rap because of his aloof personality that doesn't really come through on the internet if you aren't with him in person. He's just a very caring, understanding person.
Yeah.
And the fact that he is also a master in 2 games, is you know, a 2-time bracelet winner in poker. He had
over $1 million in winnings in poker.
Over $1 million.
And also a frequent Magic Mike's viewer. I see him in the chat all the time. Like, we see you, we get you.
Yeah, he's deserving of all of the accolades and achievements that he has achieved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Eric, from what I've sort of known and gathered over the years, didn't have a whole lot of interaction with him directly myself until I think he got much older, much more matured. But from everything I've heard, it's sort of like, you know, when sort of the alpha gamer type, you know, where they're right. You know what I mean? Like, he played and he made the right decisions, and he played the game the right way, and he won. So his opinion, you know, his word, his thinking must be right because it's been right so far in all these different ways. And over time, what I've noticed anyway is that I feel like he's kind of been like, wait, maybe I'm not necessarily the smartest guy in the room about everything. Maybe about Magic, maybe about poker, but maybe not everything. And that kind of transformation, at least that's what I've seen from the outside. And Eric's always been terrific in all of his interactions. So
yeah,
good player, got better, in the Hall of Fame, and deserves it. Let's move on here to my number 9. Always fun. Now, Adrian Sullivan likes to crunch the numbers, and he made a custom spreadsheet that like goes even deeper than the stats that Wizards provided, because they kind of break it up and put stuff together in kind of weird ways. And he separated out, you know, like the high finishers and the medium finishers and the low finishers. And sitting right there amongst the alum, literally amongst another player I'm going to be talking about later, the stats are so high, and there was no question that when he got on the ballot, Josh Utter-Layton, aka Raptor, was going to be in the Hall of Fame. This guy is a hell of a Magic player. He's been playing a very long time, recently inducted over $325,000 in winning, 6 Pro Tour top 8s, 10 GP top 8s with a win. He's just done a lot of fantastic finishes, and he's always a scary player to play against.
Yeah.
Among weighted ballots, he has the highest percentage of being voted in of the last 5-6 years, but like by a lot too. He got in with 86.3% of the vote. I think the next closest since 2016 or 2017 was his classmate Martin Juza with 66% of the vote. That's how blown out of the water Raptors stats are. He is, spectacular. He doesn't just have 4 top 8s, not even just 5 top 8s. He has 6 Pro Tour top 8s. Just an incredible career already.
Whenever I think of him, I think of his family, and specifically his mom on Twitter. And as his family just constantly rooting for him. We don't see that a lot from these guys. And I just remember his mom cheering him on. And, he looks kind of unassuming. When someone like Efro sits down, Efro is like a bigger guy. Like, that is somebody that you would be intimidated by, like, uh-oh. And like when Raptor shows up, he's kind of a smaller guy. And like, you wouldn't think of being intimidated by him. You'd be like, all right, I'm gonna blow this guy away, this little old thing. And then like, but the intellect is very fierce, and that's where he really shines.
Mm-hmm. All right. So we'll move on here to number 8. Ruben, do you have a number 8?
I don't. My number 8 is one of my 4 hires on someone else's list.
Jeez. Aaron, do you have a number 8?
I do. My number 8 is another example of a comeback kid. This young man was suspended by Wizards of the Coast, by the DCI, for a year and a half. That alone would keep him off the ballot or keep him out of people's favor. But you know what? He came back. He cleaned up his act. I am inspired by this person because he plays what he loves. A lot of times if you're playing a pro tour, if you're trying to play to be on the pro tour, you're trying to be good, you got to play what's good. Some of these guys will play, they're versatile players. You very rarely see people just stick to a certain style or a certain deck. You look at Brad Nelson, you look at Reed Duke, they will play whatever if it means it gets them the pro points or it gets them the trophies. And this young man, when it's bad, when it's good, he's playing control, and you got to love him for it. My number 8 is Guillaume Wafo-Tapa. And it's just fun to say, Wafo-Tapa. I mean, come on. French Magic player, over 173,000 in winnings. He was voted in 2014. But when you think of him, there is that little blemish of the God Book scandal. So back in 2011, he had a teammate, World Magic champion Guillaume Matignon, who received the God Book, which was a spoiler of the entire set of New Phyrexia. Apparently, Guillaume was supposed to write an article for a French magazine, and Guillaume Wafo-Tapa had access to that and essentially helped spoil the set, I guess you could say. And that is something that would have derailed anybody else's career, but he was able to come back from that. He is an inspiration to somebody. If you play a deck, you can play that same deck and be okay. Like this is the guy that you want to follow. It's always a treat to watch him play, especially if he's playing control, because he plays it in ways that the rest of us just can't even dream.
He will always play control. Like he
always. And he's also sometimes a thermometer where, like, if you're going, is control good? Is control good? If Wafo-Tapa is showing up, it's good. Like, that's just what's happening, like Groundhog Day.
lest we forget that one of his Pro Tour top 8s came at Kuala Lumpur, which was a limited Pro Tour. And so he is not a one-trick pony. He just knows his strengths.
Right.
Yeah, Wafo-Tapa is an extremely potent, powerful deck builder, theorist.
He made a deck called Drownu Deluve. Like, ooh, I just love it.
He also was the Quick and Toast innovator with his fellow Frenchman that developed that after playing at a restaurant called Quick and Toast about 50 hours a week, developing the Vivid Land Reflecting Pool mana-based control deck that became one of the defining decks of that format.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, look, around the New Phyrexia League, I mean, seriously, there are only a few times, in your life where something screwed up so bad that they go, here's the whole set. And you're like, oh, I mean, it was double clicking on that PDF. I just want to tell y'all, I remember it. It was clear. It was
Judgment, and it was New Phyrexia.
Got just completely spoiled immediately. But regardless of the scandal, he is an amazing, amazing player. Clearly just ran through that one, no problem. Wafo-Tapa is a fantastic player and hasn't had a lot of finishes lately, but I mean, like even still 2017, 2018 Nationals is
I think that
Not
Wafo
too shabby.
Tapa is one of the people who has not necessarily waned, but Magic has changed a lot since Planeswalkers happened, man. And traditional old style control decks are different than newfangled Planeswalker control decks, and so you know, it's not that it doesn't translate; it's just that it's a different world.
Mm-hmm. So my choice for number 8 here is an awesome player. I have been nothing but a gigantic fanboy of this guy, more or less since I met him. I got to see him play. He was a regular on the Pro Tour. He's been on the Pro Tour a very long time. He's so crazy good at Magic. He's so crazy good at aggro decks. Like, it's a beauty.
Aggro.
Oh, the aggros. Let me tell you. There was a quarterfinal at a Pro Tour that didn't get coverage, but I got to stand there and watch it, and it was amazing because Patrick Chapin played against Paul Rietzel in that quarterfinal, and oh my God, this man with an aggro deck is just like, it's like giving a great, musician an incredible instrument. It just sings, man. This guy is absolutely fantastic. Won over $275,000 for Pro Tour top 8s with a win. 18 GP top 8s with 2 wins. Remember the Paris bit where he played in the Grand Prix and the Pro Tour and top 8 at the Pro Tour and almost top 8 at the Grand Prix?
He got
insane.
He got 24th in the Grand Prix and top 8 at the Pro Tour, and that includes losing a match in the Grand Prix because he had to play his quarterfinal match.
Yeah, because he was too busy playing a Pro Tour.
Yep. I know him from the Vintage Super League. He's known as Little Darwin on Magic Online. So if you ever see him in the challenges or in the leagues, it's probably who you're playing against. And great guy. I love to tell the story about how I taught him how to use Skype, because I remember when I wanted him on the deck tees, he had never used Skype before. And so I literally called him on the phone and had to walk him through that. And then I remember Kai sending me a message and was like, thank you. Because he was like, we've been trying to test with him and he just won't join us in the modern age.
Wow. Yeah, he is a fantastic player who I always enjoy seeing. Let's move on here to number 7. Ruben, do you have a number 7?
I don't. This is number 2 of my 4 hires.
Aaron, do you have a number 7?
This is my first hire for the night. I only have 2 in the same.
Oh man, I wanted to close in here with that sweet 7th place. I do in fact have one.
Oops.
This is a player who made a lot of splashes early in Magic, not so much these days. Now he is still sort of consulted, sort of known as one of these sort of gurus, masters that you would go to try to learn things from, to talk about deck building with, because deck building was where he sort of broke out at first, because there's this thing called fires, and there's this guy named Zvi Mauschwitz, and he made some just absolutely busted decks for the time, read the metagame perfectly. This is exactly the deck you want to play at this exact tournament. That was kind of his brand for a long time. He has 4 Pro Tour top 8, 4 Pro Tour wins. Is that correct? Did I get that right?
He has 1 win with 4 top 8s.
There we go. 1 win, 4 top 8s. Sorry, that was a weird, sort of hard to read here.
Yeah.
But regardless, I mean, again, over 62% voted him right in, played at 38 PTs. His 3-year median is 36th. That's incredible stats for a Pro Tour.
He's also one of, if not the most, he's got to be top 3 most important writers in the history of Magic the Gathering. He wrote for the Dojo.
Yeah. Right?
You write for the Dojo and you write for Duelist Magazine. And those are the 2. And then he was also on Brain Burst.
Right.
Obviously he wrote for Star City Games. One of the first Magic articles I remember reading as a 12 or 13-year-old was about Zvi Mauschwitz, and how he played in the Urza's Saga Legacy and Urza's Legacy block Grand Prix or Pro Tour or something, and how he played the Tolarian Academy mirror masterfully, and how I just never would have thought that this is how deep this game ever went as a 13-year-old. Just an incredible mind and a fantastic.
Zvi is like Sam Black in that I feel so dumb around them. And not that they're making me feel dumb, but they just think of the game in such terms. And, I remember the first time I ever saw Zvi do a deck tech, it was almost like when you're watching the adventure movie or the epic movie and you have the mad scientist who's trying to justify the plan or sell the plan to the heroes. That's what I felt like I was watching. It was this card and that. And I'm just holding onto my chair, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening here. But I knew that he knew what he was talking about, and I just felt so woefully inadequate to even be listening to it. I was like, oh,
he actually got to be in R&D. He worked at Magic R&D from August 2005 through April 2006.
Okay.
And it's interesting. He noted on his blog that he quit because he said, I woke up and realized I wasn't having any fun. To just summate here at the end, he said, I'm just going through the motions. I ain't got that swing. I don't want this job. So he was having fun playing board games after work, going to lunch with all the cool people, but making the nuts, and bolts of the game. It's just,
well, I have to imagine like somebody like V can't be contained. You know what I mean? Where like, I can't imagine that Wizards would be the ideal playground for somebody like him to run around in. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like
I could both see an argument for like why V would be great. And I could see an argument for why V probably wouldn't be.
Right. Like I think V is best when you let him just run loose, where like you take him off the leash, dare I say, and you just let him go. And I don't think Wizards would be the prime ground for that.
It's tough to overstate just how groundbreaking V's deck building is. I mean, in the last decade, he's probably best known as being the person that breaks Llanowar elves the most often. Yeah. Like literally all of the good, like half of the good Llanowar elves decks from 10 years ago to 5 years ago were Zvi Mauschwitz design decks. Like just absolutely insane. When Llanowar elves and Arbor Elf were in the same form, or Elvish Mystic and Llanowar and Arbor Elf were in the same format together, it was a Zvi green-white deck that was the good version. And let us not forget about Turbo Zvi, which is to this day a deck that gives me a brain hemorrhage whenever I look at the deck list and like I try to figure out how this deck wins, and not just how it wins, but how it does it so efficiently and so well. Like it hurts my brain to think about how smart Zvi is.
This is where he saw was it not Welding Jar, Memory Jar.
No, this was Dream Halls. You're talking about a different story now.
Right. A different story would be when he saw Memory Jar and he was like, oh my God, this card is insanely broken. They're like, prove it. And he's like, BRB, building broken deck, comes back, shows how he wins on turn 1 multiple times. And turns out that gets, added retroactively to the ban restricted list. Yeah, Zvi is really awesome. So let's move on here to number 6. Now, of all the Hall of Famers, of which there are many, I just so happen to choose the exact same number 6 as someone else.
That'd be me.
Oh, well, you had a few where you had higher, so go ahead and talk about our number 6 here. So,
I think that this person has the most lifetime pro points. I think that this person with 595 are a level 50 Archmage Planeswalker. I saw a stat that this person went to something like 31% of all of the Grand Prix ever played.
Wow.
Ever.
That includes Grand Prix that were on like the same weekends as other Grand Prix. Just like not just a road warrior, but also a master. Has both the frequency and the amplitude. He's a former player of the year. He's reached 6 Pro Tour top 8s. He's won 7 Grand Prix and top 8'd how many? 27 Grand Prix.
Oh my, that's insane.
Shuhei Nakamura is our number 6.
Goodness gracious. Shuhei Nakamura is just a master. Just incredibly good at Magic, has just this zen-like quality of like it, it's a game. He's going to play as best he can, and if he gets there, his handshake and goes. Not a lot of emotion going on, not a lot of turmoil there, not a lot of drama there. Boy just shows up and plays great Magic, and he's just absolutely fantastic at it. And my God,
you usually find him on the Sundays of the GP with his big plastic suitcase, just ready to go. That's what he's there for. And he is one of those people that I always wanted to have on the deck tees, but he does require an interpreter, and there was just no logistical way to make that happen. But if I were to ever bring the show back, I would love to find a way to make it work, because he just seems such a fascinating individual. And I said hi to him so many times, and he probably has no idea who I am, but I was like, Shuhei! He's just super lovely. And so always a treat to watch. His decks are always, just polished and just a treat.
7.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's the only Hall of Famer to have also won the Vintage Super League. Is that correct?
It's possible. I seem to recall he played Dredge a couple times, and I remember it's definitely, it's like walking in big shoes,
Yeah,
He's family at that point.
Stat directly in front of me, but
He is just shy. The number 1 lifetime, they don't give them out anymore, pro point holder is Raphael Levy.
Okay, sure.
At 738, and Shuhei is 731.
Yeah.
That's also insane, by the way. Completely ridiculous. All right. Aaron, what's number 6?
My number 6 is probably the most charismatic person on this list. Just the package. He's done everything. He's a card game player. He's a game designer. He's a streamer. He's branched out into other games. He designed Ascension. He worked on Chaotic. Soulforge was another popular game. He helped design the World of Warcraft trading card game. He works for Eternal. He helps design Eternal. But you probably know him best for Hearthstone. My number 6 is Brian Kibler.
Oh,
I mean, what can you say about Kibbles? I mean, there's just the Dragon Master. I started playing at 15 years old, back when they had the Junior Super Series, I believe it was called. Just one of the youngest players to get started, and just had an impressive career. A bit of a heartthrob, if you will. A lot of people know him for just being an attractive dude, a funny dude. If you ever get the chance to meet him, one of the things that really blew me away about Kibler is I remember being at Gen Con one year, and he was working in the Ascension area, and I had come to say hi to him, and he had asked me if I wanted to demo something. And the lines at Gen Con, if you've never been, are incredibly long, and people can get very cranky. And I remember just seeing Kibler, just with the sheer force of his personality, appease each and every one of these people. Like, people that were in line and cranky and didn't want to be there and hot, he would just come up to every one of them and be like, "You ready to go? You know what? I got you." And with like that smile, it all went away. These people were like, "Oh, yeah, of course, I'm ready." And like, that just knocked my socks off. The way he has with people, and the way that he looks at life, and the way he deals with life, and the way he plays the game of life. I find that very impressive. I will always remember him as part of the bonfire gif, a famous moment of him being on the receiving end of a bonfire and losing what, could have been a winning game. And, there were just so many moments of magic, famously falling out with Wizards, and then having Wizards ask him to come back and promote Arena. I mean, there were just so many moments that are just very Kibler only. And it's always a pleasure to see him on, and his magnetism and his personality. There's just no one else like it.
I mean, the guy is a force of personality. It's just like, it's
Shiro. I mean,
his charisma is unreal. In real life, the exact same thing. You're like,
oh yeah, and humble. I remember when I hate to keep saying this, but I had 12 Hall of Famers on the deck teams, and a lot of them are on our list. So he was on the show. And I remember he's a former fat kid. And I remember I had asked him on the show about sort of being seen as this heartthrob. And he was like, "I will always be the fat kid on the playground." And I was not expecting that to come from him. And so he's always been sort of humble, and you just can't be mad at the guy.
One of my favorite stories about Kibler is a Hearthstone story. I think the first tournament he ever played in for Hearthstone, he was streaming. And his account did not yet have all of the cards unlocked yet. And he was playing against cards and reading what the cards did as he was playing in this tournament. And oh, by the way, he made top 4.
Of course he did.
Just is such a natural that he knew how to maneuver game states around cards that he didn't know existed. And just an unbelievable intuitive talent, in addition to all of the other great things that you can say about Brian Kibler.
10 years ago, I was planning a trip to Pro Tour Austin, where I got to see Kibler's big comeback. Pro Tour Austin 2009 was his gigantic comeback with his, what was it, like Naya Kibler Angels or something?
Yeah, Naya Kibler, or Kibler Naya, that Ben Rubin top-aided that tournament with, I think.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and got to see him.
Baneslayer Naya.
With Baneslayer Angel right in there. And it's fun to even think back of when Kibler was like, Baneslayer Angel's card's like, it's like the best card they've ever printed in Standards. Card's insane. And he kept playing it until like everyone else was like, "Oh, it is like the best card in Standard." And then the Mythic deck showed up essentially, which was great. But yeah, it's hard to say enough good things about Kibler. He's awesome. All right, we're lucky to have him. Let's move on here to number 5. Ruben, what's your number 5?
Third of 4 hires.
Oh no!
Goodness gracious! All right, Aaron, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is just a treasure. Like, I ask myself what we ever did to have this person in our community, because he's not only brilliant, but he's another case study of somebody who loves what he does. Anything having to do with affinity, he's there. Anything having to do with math, I think he wrote his thesis on math when I had him on the deck tees. One of my favorite stories about this person goes back to 2007 when he played a Pro Tour Yokohama and was so sick that he had to play with a bucket at his feet through the entire event. My number 5 is Frank Karsten. I just, what can you say about him? Like, he's brilliant, and he genuinely loves the decks he plays, and he's also known as being an analytical mind and a writer. Anytime of like anything having to do with probability. I remember one of the articles I first discovered was when I first started playing Modern Ad Nauseam, and people were going, well, if you're going to play Spoils of the Vault, you know, what are the odds that you're going to exile your win condition? And he's like, I got it. Come to find out, you have like a 93% chance to not hit your win conditions, and that's worth playing the card for. And so anytime you've wondered like exactly how many lands you should be playing, what is the probability of you finding a ley line in a certain number of hands or whatever, that is the guy that you go to. And but he's also very approachable. Like, you would think somebody like that would be, there would be an aura about him or a way about him that would make it so that you couldn't hang with him. But no, he's just like a friendly, down-to-earth guy who just also happens to be brilliant. And if you ever watch him do a deck tech on Affinity, he loves playing the deck so much, even when it's good, when it's bad. That attracts me to him. And just I can't say enough good things about him. He's just amazing.
You know, one of these days, I will tell the tale of the 2007 Invitational. At which point, Carson was in, by the way, and some unfortunate events that happened at that event, few of which have been repeated, as far as I know, in history. Really interesting stuff. One day. All I know is Frank Karsten is the mathematician of the community. He is the guy you look to of, here's this crazy combo. What's the chances it's going to work? Here's this new combo deck. Like, what's the chances you're going to get all the pieces? Like, you know, how likely are you to hit Hogak on turn 2? Stuff like that. That's the person we kind of default turn to at this point.
What happens if you Coco like every creature in the game? You know, just these weird thought experiments that nobody else would think of, but he thinks of it and is so eager to dive into it.
Yeah. Somebody call Frank Karsten.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. All right. So we are in top 5 category. We are in the big hitters here. And to me, this guy is just incredible in terms of stats. Now, it's not the Hall of Stats, and that's important. It's the Hall of Fame. But this guy, for having a living sort of as remotely as he does, as hard it is to get to all these events, as well as he's done over the years, super charismatic guy, super good guy, fantastic player, unblemished record. Oh my God, 12 Pro Tour top 8s with 2 wins is Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa. Yep. He started playing here, it looks like 2003 in the World Championships. He has, again, 12 PT top 8s with 2 wins, 24 GP top 8s with 2 wins. He's played in 55 Pro Tours, and his median finish is 64th. Top 64 over all that time is incredible.
Yeah, this is somebody who's literally grown up playing Magic. This was my number 7. You know, I remember
number 7.
Ooh,
he had a secret same.
Ooh,
Yay.
secret sames.
I mean, I remember when I think BDM had stepped down from like doing coverage, and PB's mom was on Twitter. And one of the most touching moments is when she responded to BDM and she was like, you know, you were the first person that like acknowledged my son or like gave him the time of day. And so you can literally go back and see PB grow up before your eyes. And you know, you see, there's just nobody you think of, you can't not root for him. You know, like he's wholesome, he's friendly, he's clearly having fun, he's clearly good at what he does. And he doesn't give you too much. Like, you know, when I'm reading a PB strategy article, he gives you just enough, but he doesn't give you everything. And I feel like, you know, Magic content nowadays is you get a sideboard guide, you get a detailed matchup and everything. And he's like, no, I'm going to give you breadcrumbs. And that's what really stands out to me when I read a PB article, is that not only is he friendly and human, you know, he famously loves the Olive Garden of all places, you know, he's got this sort of boy next door appeal with you know, a really talented mind, and also just giving you enough to keep you reading and wanting more.
He has 12 Pro Tour top 8s.
Mm-hmm.
That is second most all time.
Yep.
When I hear people listing the best players of all time, for some reason, Paulo comes in 4th or 5th. And I think that might be just American bias or historical bias. because he has 12 top 8s with 2 wins. That is 2 Hall of Fame careers. That is 2 good Hall of Fame careers. It's probably 3 Hall of Fame careers.
Yeah.
Goodness
in
gracious.
one.
Yeah, that many top 8s you split. You know, again, what 4 top 8s is like, you know, one of the stats they look for. He's done it 3 times.
He has twice as many wins and twice as many top 8s as Camiel Cornelison, who is probably top 20 on my list, right?
Jeez.
So it's just absurd.
Absolutely. Let's move on here to number 4. Ruben, do you have a number 4?
My number 4 is the last hire on my list.
Okay, Aaron, what's number 4?
My number 4 is, I mean, just a renaissance man. If there's anything that can be done in Magic, he's probably done it. He's done coverage. He has developed sets. You know, he's had a successful competitive career. He is responsible for things like the Vintage Super League, for bringing, you know, vintage and old school to the forefront. I mean, there's just no part of Magic that Randy Buehler hasn't touched. I mean, just redefining coverage the way that he has. You know, I remember when he left, all of the outpouring of support and well wishes on Twitter. I've had the pleasure to work with him on 3 seasons of the Vintage Super League. He invited me to the Community Super League. I mean, it's just been, you know, I remember the first time I met him, I was just sort of like, oh my God, this is Randy Buehler. He loves board games. He loves all things gaming. You know, you really can just learn from him. You know, you mentioned Ruben, the person that you want to kind of sit at their feet. I feel that way about Randy. Like, I could hear Randy talk about anything, and I think he's brilliant. And it's just been so great to work with him. One of my favorite stories I love to tell about Randy is when I was doing the Community Super League and we were doing Modern Nights. And everybody assumed that we were going to play Dredge because I was on the team. And the girls and I had submitted a Delver deck. And I remember, I'll never forget, it was a Wednesday night. We just got done recording the show. And Randy sends me a message and he goes, what do you think you're doing? And I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, why aren't you playing Dredge? And I was like, well, you know, like, I wanted to think outside the box. I wanted to be different. And he goes, that's nice. You're here to play Dredge. And I was like, yep. Whoa. And so when Randy Buehler is telling you, like, it's like when you're watching Drag Race and RuPaul's in the workroom and telling you your outfit is crap, that's what he was basically doing. And I'll never forget Randy at midnight on a Wednesday, you're here to play Dredge. I love Randy. He's great.
That is fantastic. So, I got to meet Randy for the first time when I went to Pro Tour Valencia right before the Invitational. And, you know, at the time, I just kind of sort of like, you know, I'll try to let it sink in a little bit in terms of like, man, I'm right here. Like right there is, you know, right there's Randy Buehler, right there's R&D, and over there's Aaron Forsyth. Oh my God, you know, and all this stuff of who was there and who I could see. And there was a question at one point. They were talking about thirst for knowledge. Like these were R&D members, including Randy Buehler, and they were talking about how thirst for knowledge was the best rate that they could give you right now on card draw at the time. This was 2007 or whatever, and I was just like, whoa, this is like the kind of the stuff they just sit around and talk about when they're, you know, in R&D. I was like, this is so cool. Kind of in that inside baseball. I'm hanging out with Randy and all the R&D guys talking about Magic and future Magic sets, and they're kind of alluding to stuff that they can't talk about, and I'm just like, oh, this is so cool. Like that was the stuff that I wanted to capture as part of the show and part of, you know, showing the community and showing what happens at these big events. And Randy was always super gracious, super nice, super awesome, giving of his time whenever I needed it. Would track me down and we'd talk about stuff whenever I saw him at Pro Tours and whatnot. Randy is excellent people, and Cool Stuff Inc. got to sponsor a lot of those vintage and or modern Super Leagues.
I'm a big fan of Randy, and his community contributions can't be understated. Not just the Super League, but all of the work he's done throughout time. The fact that he can't play competitive Pro Tour level Magic is a little sad right now for a number of reasons. I also recall meeting Randy at Worlds 2007. This was New York, when Evan and I slept on the floor of neutral ground during a snowstorm, and Randy let me try on his Hall of Fame ring, which was really exciting for me. He's always just been such a giving and caring person, and yeah, big fan.
That's awesome. All right, we'll move on here to my number 4. And my number 4 to this very day, is a very popular, well-known player and or streamer these days, and has been in lots and lots of competitions. I've got to see him up close and personal. I got to be like just feet away watching him play in Worlds against Patrick Chapin, which was at that same event we just talked about, which was fan-freaking-tastic, because Gabriel Nassif is a hell of a Magic player. Yellow Hat himself won over $350,000 in Magic, 9 Pro Tour top 8s, 2 wins, 6 GP top 8s with 1 win, and just one of the sort of best, most methodical players. He's very well known for just like, you know, Nassif is patient, all right? Nassif is going to hang out and check it out and think about it and look at it and talk about it and sometimes think about it some more and then might play it. But what about this other option? You know, I mean, like, so Nassif does that a lot where you're like, okay, buddy, let's just play a land and say go, you know? But Nassif, no, he's got to think about the mangles, and obviously that's why he's a Hall of Famer, and I'm just like, play the land and say go.
I lovingly compare him to the sloth from Zootopia. Because every time I watch his stream, it's just like it's Magic Online, but it's just this deliberate, and it's deliberate because obviously he's thinking of every line. So I'm certainly not trying to shade him, but it's the fact that he sees lines where the rest of us don't, where the rest of us would be like, just make the play. How many plays could you possibly make it? Just do it. And he's just like, no. And he's going over every possibility. And I always just think of that sloth of just the slow open smile.
And the best, honestly, I've noticed that trait is very similar to the best in the world of just like, there's an obvious play that you just do and say go, and they know, no, they give it some time.
Gabe, so first of all, Gabriel Nassif is my number 8.
Nice.
Definitely. I mean, there was a time when he was the 3rd best all time. I think he's probably still top 5 or 6. He is the first player to win the Player of the Year race without a Pro Tour victory. He has lost more finals than every other player. And oh, by the way, he is one of, if not the most accomplished French poker players as well. Who I think has either the first or second most World Series of Poker final tables among Frenchmen. He is an extremely charismatic dude as well. And I am a huge fan. And also part of 2 of the most indelible images in televised Pro Tour coverage. There's the called shot Cruel Ultimatum. And of course, there's the epic Mono Red Dragonstorm mirror with teammate Patrick.
Yes.
Were both pretty incredible. And of course, the Cruel Ultimatum one was made all the better because apparently he had sideboarded out all but one of the Cruel Ultimatums. Oh my God. 61 card, 5-color control deck, which was even more as if it needed more pageantry.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the stories around Nassif are many, and it's funny. Early in his career, he gained a reputation as a notorious silver collector, has a runner-up in 3 Pro Tours, a Grand Prix, and a Masters. But of course, that changed in 2005, and the rest is history. Gabriel Nassif is awesome. Let's move on here to our number 3. Ruben, what's your number 3?
All right. I had teased my co-hosts that I was going to get some crap
for
people on my list. However, I think that there is a good reason why I should have this person on my list. There are only 3 people to have ever beaten the German juggernaut Kai Bude in the knockout rounds of the Pro Tour. He is one of them. There are a very limited number of people who have played in over 90 Pro Tours in a row. He is one of them. He qualified for every Pro Tour event held in the 2000s and participated in all but one of them. He's actually second only to Ralph Levy on the list of the players with the most Pro Tour appearances. He also had a little bit of interesting Pro Tour controversy, none of which was his fault, because somehow the Pro Tour miscalculated how many votes that Bram Snepvangers got in 2010.
Wow.
The wrong weighted percentage. And so Bram Snepvangers, a Dutch all-star with 4 Pro Tour top 8s, who has been a stalwart member of the Hall of Fame, I think is worthy of recommending for this list.
I mean, the man has a tournament named after him. Each year he hosts an invitational tournament for Dutch players called the Bram Invitational. Like, I'm a fan. I remember he showed up at a recent pro tour. He's somebody kind of an on and off competitor. And I remember they gave him a feature match, and just to see the kids that are like, what's a snap bangers? And just being some completely, seeing this guy, this older guy with glasses and buttoned up shirt and so proper. And just the people who weren't there were like, get this nerd off the screen. And it's like, that is a Hall of Famer. Like, you show some respect.
That's right.
You kids, get out of here.
These days, yes, some of his best finishes were way back in the day, but that doesn't mean they weren't important. They didn't count, and the guy's not fantastic at Magic.
Oh God, I want to have him on my show just to call the episode "Bend and Snap Bangers."
Oh my God! Well, I got to see him play live, which I always love and appreciate, and he's damn good. All right.
Hashtag Bend and Snap Bangers. Call me. We can work on your branding. It's fine.
Got this. Aaron, what's your number 3?
My number 3 is my last hire on somebody else's list.
I see. All right. Fair enough. Well, my number 3 is well known. My number 3 is so well known, you could argue that he's one of the most well-known Magic players that exists right now on the planet. He has qualified for his first Pro Tour in 2004, had a breakout performance 2006 Nationals, which was great. Went on to win 2007 Nationals, which I was there for that one, which was fun. And, there's nothing like luck, skill, or victory when there's Luis, Scott, and Vargas involved. Created his own website with John Sasso, channelfireball.com, that exists to this day as a home of strategy articles and selling of Magic product. Won over $335,000, has 10 Pro Tour top 8s with a win, 15 GP top 8s with 5 wins. Is just absolutely one of the best players, content creators, personalities, minds in the game. And honestly, and also got to see him, have a whole transformation of himself where he lost a whole bunch of weight after having so much on him for so long. And that was great to see as well.
I mean, just everything LSV touches turns to gold. I mean, like any format he's playing, he does well in it. He could stream himself eating a hero and people would watch it. I mean, all of his articles are hits. He's famous for the set reviews on Channel Fireball that people turn to every new set for both standard and limited.
Mm-hmm.
He's a treat to watch. He can stream just about anything. He famously hates Dredge, which I love. And just a great guy. Like there's just nobody else like him.
This was my number 4, by the way.
Nice.
Obviously, LSV has to make an appearance on this list. Pretty consensus top 3 all time. Also has the record for most wins in a row at a Pro Tour, and I believe also the most losses in a row amongst Pro Tours. I believe he lost his last 4 and then his first 4 of a Pro Tour in a row at one point.
Well, that's a kick in the butt right there.
Well, you win some and then you lose some.
Yep. All right. So let's move here to our number 2. Rube, what's number 2?
So this one, I think you will, if you appreciated Bram Snapfangers, you're going to appreciate the history that I have to bring up to you here. Because there are only a couple of names that come to mind when you think of people that have dominated Pro Tours, but also Pro Tour seasons. There's only one player who's ever won 2 consecutive Pro Tours, whom I believe we'll probably talk at number 1 at one point. But they were team Pro Tours. There was a team Pro Tour and an individual Pro Tour. But there was a player who won back-to-back individual Pro Tours in limited. It was broken up in between by a constructed Pro Tour. And that player is Nikolai Herzog, who won back-to-back limited format Pro Tours in 2004, winning Amsterdam and San Diego. There was, of course, the Block Pro Tour. That was the Time Spiral Pro Tour in between. Nikolai Herzog is a former Norwegian Pro Magic player and limited specialist, and is an extremely powerful mage, 5 total Pro Tour top 8s with his 2 wins. And the list of people who have 2 wins is just not long. And the people who have 5 top 8s is not long. You think about getting in with no top 8 or 4 top 8s and no wins. I mean, Nikolai Herzog just, did it a decade and a half ago. And I think it's well worth talking about in this conversation.
Goodness gracious. Did make top 8 of a Grand Prix in 2010. It's a little, it strikes me a little odd to me. Like, you think that Herzog's above Levy and Antoine Rel and all those guys?
For me?
Yeah.
How many wins?
How many wins?
Did they win back to back?
Are we just brought up at the brass ring here? You know,
Hey, you have your requirements and I have my requirements. This is
All
not the
right.
best players of all time, mind you.
Fair.
This is not Magic Mike's top 10 best Magic the Gathering players of all time. This is the Magic the Gathering top 10 Hall of Famers. And when you separate yourself in a way, when you are unique in a way, when you're the only Norwegian, when you are the only person to do such a feat, when you have singular statistics, you get special recommendation on my list.
Very nice. Aaron, what's number 2?
So my number 2 just has so many accolades. He was the first player to have been inducted while active on the Pro Tour. So think about that. A lot of these guys aren't still playing when they get inducted. He was one of only 6 players to have won a Grand Prix on 3 different continents. He currently holds the record for lifetime pro points, which might be up in the air. And he didn't miss a Pro Tour until Pro Tour Ixalan. And the only reason he missed it was because he had a baby. My number 2 is Raphael Levy. I've just had such a good time getting to know this man. I actually first discovered Raph Levy because many people don't know this, but before Modern Dredge that we know and love came about, some of the earliest versions of Modern Dredge started off as Loam Pox, which is where you played with zombie infestation and smallpox and various sundry dredgers. And so that was the early version of Modern Dredge. And then after things like Cathartic Reunion and Insolent Neonate came out and all of that, then it started to veer into the deck that we all know and that we play. And just recently was the subject of a ban. And yes, I have some thoughts on that for tomorrow. But that was the first time I really ever interacted with Raph, and I got to see his process and I got to learn about him. He also tried pushing for a dress code ages ago back on the competitive scene, which I thought was brilliant and has been the hill that I've been willing to die on forever. I remember he did a video about South African magic. He spends a lot of time in South Africa. I believe his wife's family lives there. And so he's very passionate about getting different communities and different cultures and countries and continents involved in magic. Obviously he's a great magic player. He's a brilliant mind, just entertaining, smart, approachable, and just has, an epic career that not many magic players can come close to or probably will.
Yeah.
Smart guy, like super nice, like crazy good at the game, crazy humble. He's like a martial arts master, which is really cool.
Kid.
Almost as decorated, I think, in jiu-jitsu as he in jiu-jitsu as he is in magic.
Wow. Yeah, he is the stalwart that was just at every event, every Pro Tour. Yeah. Raph was there every single time nonstop from 1997, which is amazing. So, but he gets a pass for the kid. It's
a cute kid.
Very
it was a Great Rebellion, it'd be a different story.
Yeah, but Raph has always been a top-notch player and absolutely fantastic to have on the Hall of Fame. All right, so my number 2, I don't care if it's obvious. I don't care if y'all don't like it, because there are a few resumes and there are a few people feared like the German juggernaut, the king of the Grand Prix. Himself, Kai Buddha.
Yes. Buddha, rocking everywhere.
Semi-retired professional Magic the Gathering player, according to Wikipedia here, who holds the record for Pro Tour victories and for a long time held the record for earnings and lifetime pro points. Oh, yes. He has kind of left Magic. He came back to Magic. He's always kind of there, in my opinion. He's always been very active in Twitter all these years, which has been great to see. A fantastic player, awesome to watch, and just broke all the records back in the day. No one had ever seen anything like him. How are we going to stop Kai? What happens when Kai is going to win another Pro Tour? Wasn't this the one about the bet where they said, I'll eat my hat if he wins the next Pro Tour, and then he won the Pro Tour, and the guy had to eat his hat?
Yep, that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kai was my number 5.
And my number 3. Yeah, I had the pleasure of, again, speaking with him on my show. I was up at 3 a.m. so that I could talk to him on German time because he was 6 or 7 hours ahead of me, but I was willing to do it to get a chance to meet Kai and talk to Kai. One of my favorite moments of that episode was I asked him about sort of his quote unquote decline, if you will. And I found out a lot of it was voluntary. And I even asked him, I was like, you were at the top of your game and you stopped. Why did you stop? And he goes, because I didn't have anyone to play with. And that was so novel to me because I just assumed that like you had this money, you had the success, you would just want to keep going. And he was like, but the people I came up with weren't playing anymore. And that was when I really started to realize that a lot of these guys, despite their records and their accolades, they're there for the gathering. And even LSV, I remember LSV famously told me, Paul Cheon makes the Pro Tour for me. And that was the first taste of that, hearing somebody that was so successful being willing to walk away from it all because they didn't have anyone to share it with. And that sort of contributed to his lack of enthusiasm to playing the game. He also famously told me a story about how he threw a deck in the fire once because it didn't do well at a tournament. He just chucked the whole thing in. And so Kai is just funny. He's smart. He's relatable. There's just no one else like him. He's everything.
All right. So let's move on here to our number one. I share a number one with how many people? Just you?
No, I mean,
I was going to say, if you don't have this boy on your...
have the same number one. Of course we do.
Of course we do.
Guess who? That's why I said it. It's like, of course. There's no metric by which, like, I can't get cute with number one. You know what I mean? There's no metric by which you think of the Magic the Gathering Hall of Fame and you don't think of this person.
It's true.
Mm-hmm.
The man has a record over and over and over again. He has arguably up to 4 Hall of Fame resumes, 16 Pro Tour top 8s,
97% of the ballot.
Oh yeah, and somebody had to be contrarian and not vote for him.
3 wins, 16 top 8s. Also has a junior title. He has many nicknames. He has nationals finishes as well, in addition to all of his Pro Tours. He has 3 Grand Prix wins among his 10 Grand Prix top 8s, but he has more Pro Tour.
He became a role model for single male Magic players everywhere when he found himself in a dating controversy because some girl went on a date with him and then was like, he's a nerd.
Magic
she went after the wrong nerd.
Designer Mark Rosewater said, John Finkel is the most naturally gifted player the game has ever seen.
Mm-hmm. He was very involved politically. He dabbles in hedge funds, I think, or the stock. I think it was hedge funds last time I checked.
Ran a hedge fund for a while.
Yeah, he gets involved with causes. He has a lot of really great opinions on things. Very approachable. Loves Storm. Like if you ever watch him play Storm, that is art. Like take notes because no one plays Storm like he does. And he forces Storm, I think, in cubes all the time. Like he's always like the vintage cube legacy Stormin'. And there's just no words. All you can say is he's Finkel. That's really all it comes down to.
And if you want to learn more about him, you can read Johnny Magic and the Card Shark Kids, which is a book about his rise in both Magic and poker and blackjack card counting. But, it's like there's nothing more indelible in terms of professional Magic and the Pro Hall of Fame than John Finkel.
Him and Kai just sort of being intertwined together for, they've been sort of rivals for as long as you can't talk about one without the other. And so if you're going to talk about Kai or even Finkel, the other's not too far behind.
Yeah, they're for a moment, I feel like they were very neck and neck. And then as the past 10 years or so have happened, Finkel has just made another Hall of Fame career because that's just what Finkel's done.
Sometimes you see them working together where it's like, I think there was a Pro Tour where they were on the same. I was like, oh my God.
StarCityGames.com. When we were in Dublin, I stayed in the house in the castle with them.
Yeah.
Interesting fact about that period of time. There was a year there, right in about 2015, maybe it was 2014, where the best median finish for the year, number 1 and number 2, in 2014 or 2015, one of these years, a decade after you think of these players, John Finkel and Kai Bude had the best finishes during those years.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's hard to say too much about Johnny Magic. John Finkel, somebody's got to be the GOAT. It might as well be him.
Yep.
There you go. All right. That was our top 10 Hall of Famers. You'll see them on the screen right now for your review. Take a look at my list, Aaron's list, Ruben's top 10. We want to hear from you about what person we did not talk about. And we'll select our favorite to win a $50 gift certificate to CoolStuffInc.com. But before we go, I want to thank my co-hosts. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ruben.
Thank you. And I want to thank Magic the Gathering and Wizards of the Coast for continuing the Hall of Fame and continuing to invite little old me and little old us to continue to participate as community members. And we look forward to participating in the positive discussion for this year's Hall of Fame class.
Absolutely. We'll move here to our final slide. I want to thank our sponsor, CoolStuffInc.com, our co-sponsor, CardHoarder.com, my co-hosts, Aaron Campbell and Ruben Bressler. You guys for watching or listening. I hope you support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv @MagicMics, on Twitter @MagicMicsCast, our Magic Mics subreddit, and like the Magic Mics page on Facebook. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes and Spotify. Or join us here next week. Same time, same place for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.